First and foremost, shout out to the channel FBE Capital. I was previously unaware of this channel, but after this content about me was sent to me, I took a look at all of their content. They have fantastic content that's over there. So guys, I'm gonna leave a link to FBE Capital down in the description box down below. Go check them out. Nevertheless, FBE Capital recently did a video on me entitled "While the Real MTR is Under Insane Attack from Feminist, War on Masculinity and Male Leadership." Okay, now if you look down in their description, the research into the real MTR, also known as Mediocre Tutorials and Reviews, shows that there's a war going on against masculinity. Feminists do not want men to teach or advise other men. They want to fully control who is allowed to talk to men and what they say. This is a deep dive into the false research paper on the manosphere, showing how the data was manipulated and the dozens of mistakes that were made. So this video is a deep dive into the organization that ranked me as number 2, that was funded by the government, on a list that they created entitled Male Supremacists. So I've already properly debunked the bull in that paper, but this is such a well done video, as well as bringing up additional perspectives as well, that I wanted to introduce it to you guys while also providing my commentary. So let's get active on this one. Without further ado,
I worked on the Diverting Hate report, where we artificially put Sandman and MTR on the number 1 and 2 spot. This project was led by Caitlin Tierney, founder of Diverting Hate, and consulted on by Professor Jason Blazakis.
An act of violent extremism.
He's the director of the Center on Counterterrorism and was previously stationed in Kabul, Afghanistan. Caitlin told us to use proper research methodology to identify the main targets in the manosphere and retro space.
We then use that research to effectively target this audience online.
This was a lie.
this is why I tell you guys so often that the most important decision that you will ever make in your life is who you choose to wake up next to. Complete facts.
I had been convicted of manslaughter in the 1st degree. I had taken my then boyfriend's life.
I love angry women because angry women are free.
Of stabbing her boyfriend to death.
Shooting her boyfriend dead in a jealous rage.
Stabbing her ex-boyfriend more than a dozen times.
At the point that you recognize crazy, let it go. Nothing is worth the risk to your sanity.
Anger, especially.
You know what's interesting about, and I love the way he's juxtaposing what I'm saying versus the reality of the situation. But the things that I'm saying within those 2 clips, it could be both male or female, men or women. But the problem is that when you give advice like that and the majority of your audience is male, that's when they have a problem with it.
Women is incredibly important. Always be angry.
Where women calling themselves femcells are posting extreme,
I hate men.
we hate men, kill all men, and violent content.
Whoa. I do think that the key to solve some of the biggest issues within our society today is family building.
Is to nurture
Facts.
that rage.
Wealth transfer. Two-parent household. Yes.
When I first shot him, he let out a really loud noise.
I do think there's a place for rage. I agree with you, and particularly for women in rage.
That is not reality. We need each other.
Do anything like this to just basically ruin the lives of a man.
Being a stoic, rational, moral man.
I say that anger is just the beginning.
No. You know, women are getting more mentally ill. Shooting him in the face.
I gave him his nose job. He wanted.
They emotionally react to something instead of logically respond to it. When I was talking about right there, I was talking about men emotionally reacting versus logically or stoically responding in a situation, which gets us into much more trouble than our female counterparts, with men having higher conviction rates and then longer jail sentences for those conviction rates against women for the same exact crime.
More men in each of them, 50 a week than 100 men than 500. How many men do you think must be killed before patriarchy begins to dismantle?
Liberation movements around the world have always claimed the right to be violent.
Killing and mutilating her boyfriend a year ago in Wisconsin.
Against occupying forces. I consider patriarchy an occupying force, and I demand my right to be violent.
Cancel her.
Yes, guys, we have now reached a point in society where if you call out truly awful behavior in women,
You're going to jail. You're going to jail.
That video did well. Mind you, the children are in the house screaming. You got to think about the pure insanity the pure lack of emotional control.
Then you are classified as a raging misogynist.
We work to divert men away from misogynistic rabbit holes online.
The 13 of us were really passionate about early prevention.
However, if you then combine that content with giving men advice on how to deal with real-world situations.
As a man, the worst mistake that you can make in the West today is having kids with the wrong woman. But the fact of the matter is that men are more likely to die early, get hurt on the job, or work themselves to death.
At least 74 people have died in the Bakken oil fields.
Ask Kim where everybody's at and how many are there, and he just says, Derek man's dead, the Derek man's dead.
One of the best lessons that I have learned over the past several months as I have experienced considerable hardship within my life is the benefits of balance.
Then clearly you are a
I'm still working it out.
supremacist, and they will link you to domestic terrorism.
R.I.P. Kevin.
Misogyny is actually a gateway to other forms of extremism.
The broad issue of domestic terrorism or countering terrorism away.
Yep, she actually used those words. It's completely insane. Now this is Caitlin Tierney, and she's the driving force behind the Diverting Hate report that put Mediocre Tutorials and Reviews, Legion of Men, Araku TV, and a whole bunch of other creators on a male supremacy list, claiming that they are dangerous and destructive individuals.
Which is so crazy.
Landed on gender-based violence, misogyny as a link to violence, and then a deeper interest in the incel movement specifically.
Now both MTR and Evan Preach talked about this on their platforms.
We did.
But they only scratched the surface of this 55-page pile of garbage.
Yeah.
Since it goes way beyond what was mentioned in their original videos, and things are about to get absolutely crazy. I'm talking Pakistani terrorist network, data manipulation, extramarital affair, and sexual abuse. But before we get into all of that, let's back up a bit and talk about why the real MTR is even being investigated like this
Let's
in
talk
the first
about
place. So if you don't know him, the real MTR, or Mediocre Tutorials and Reviews, is a major content creator on YouTube who focuses on educating men on how to deal with real-life situations.
All of the red flags to just go off and think that, well, maybe she'll get better. Maybe she'll improve. Maybe she'll when there's no incentivization to do so. He's got kids with multiple baby mamas. Please wrap it up, wrap it up, wrap it up, wrap it up.
Now I won't be going into detail on some of these scandals behind the scenes that perfectly explain why Caitlin was able to get this report with so many errors approved and published, since it might reveal the identity of my source. However, this is where Jason Blazakis comes in, and it makes his involvement both problematic and laughably bad, since Jason was both a paid advisor to this research team and an editor of the final report.
Focuses on incel-related violence.
Thanks for that, Jason.
You see, Jason actually has real-world experience with truly dangerous and extremist individuals.
So I was actually in the State Department office as the head of the office responsible for sanctioning individuals and organizations as terrorists. And I was actually in the U.S. government chair when we designated Sirajuddin Haqqani as a specially designated global terrorist.
So to put that into perspective here, Haqqani is one of the most dangerous terrorists on the planet, with a $10 million FBI bounty on his head. And the guy who studied Haqqani and tried to kill or capture him for years looked at MTR's content and said, yeah, that is a dangerous individual.
That is so ridiculous.
Put him on an extremist list in a report filled with misogyny and hate.
As you get older, you begin to look at the world just a wee bit differently. When I was 16, September 11th happened. The word terrorist became one of the most feared words in our dictionary. But as I got older and I began to understand the meanings of words and how they're used to herd people together, to make them believe into something, when I hear the word terrorist, now I interpret it as our enemy. Now, it doesn't mean that our enemy is wrong in their beliefs. We have determined that because we want to be on top, these are the things that we believe in, and they're in our way, they are our enemy. And what this report has proven is that they'll get qualified people to establish who the enemy is in an effort to try to win against the enemy. And because feminism is now mainstream and there's dollars connected to the proliferation of feminism, now content that helps men self-develop or to look at situations and think a little bit differently before they make that mistake is now seen as the enemy. Let's keep watching.
Now, some of you might think, well, wait just a minute. It's not an extremist list, right? it is a male supremacy list. Well, in that case, you've been tricked by feminist semantics.
Yes.
Because the only reason why they are calling it a male supremacy list is because guys like MTR are a little too tan to be called white supremacists.
Shout out to AMS and TLA. But yes, it's right. They created a new term like terrorist or like white supremacist in order to try to bucket us all together as the enemy.
Or far-right extremist. However, make no mistake, that is exactly what they mean when they say male supremacy.
You know about white supremacy, but have you heard of male supremacy? It's a kind of potentially violent extremism that experts say is on the rise. Male supremacy can be defined as a hateful ideology advocating for the subjugation of women.
See what I mean? And this is how they try to use the game of degrees of separation to then link those creators like MTR to violent extremism in...
I think that I love that he did right there. He's linking that everybody who has done content in the manosphere space, and listen, I've never ever said that I was a part of the manosphere. I think just because of the growth of my channel, people associate me with the manosphere without the understanding that the content type that I do on my channel, I was the first one to do it. Specifically, commentary in a niche within bad behavior content, viral topics that more so placate to the eyes and the ears of men from a logic-based perspective. I'm the first one to do that. And one of the reasons why, and I've said this multiple times on my platform, why I don't say that I develop content for the manosphere is because all of the negative branding associated around the manosphere. I've always said, if I cannot control the branding, then why would I want to be associated with it? There's not a president of the thing. There's not people saying, okay, you can do this. Okay, here are the boundaries. Don't do that. So why would I want my channel associated with that? But because of the bad press that this gets from grifters, from those that really don't have good intentions or can deliver real value to their audience, because of this, people just automatically assume that you're trying to subjugate women or remove power from women, and then they automatically assume incel or violent extremism type of behavior, which is so ridiculous. Meanwhile, if you watch my content, yeah, I could be biased. I'm a man at the end of the day. I'm looking at shit with a masculine perspective. So of course I'm gonna have my own way of thinking about shit. I've never said that I'm not biased, baby. I'm a human being. But to try to connect violence and extremism when I actively tell men on the channel, do not be violent, do not react in situations, think through it, take a day, and then respond with intelligence. That's the part of my content that I ride for, and that's how I've lived my life. I would have gotten exposed years ago for some fugazi shit in my past, because trust me, people have been looking to do that. But there's nothing there because I live my life how I conduct my content. Always have, always will. Let's go.
To then link those creators like MTR to violent extremism in real life.
Crazy.
What is referred to as the manosphere, which is essentially the online world where men sort of trade secrets on how to get
look at her neck.
control violate women.
Just the feminism was just oozing off of her chapped lips, just oozing to just come out. If this lady was involved in a study, I'm willing to put money that she's never seen my content whatsoever. Generally, these people only think about or know Andrew Tate because he's reached another level of famous. And if you take shorts or clips of Tate over the past 5 to 6 years, then I could get a component of what she's saying. But that's not everybody.
Control violate women.
Now this very polarizing and dangerous game is exactly the gospel of Caitlin Tierney, but perhaps the most telling part of this entire report and clear evidence that they are not being truthful at all is that nowhere in these 55 pages will you find a single instance of them mentioning their conversion results. That is highly suspicious, because the whole point of their research was, as they say, divert men away from dangerous sources and towards healthier handpicked options that they control.
Our strategy is to divert men, incel and incel adjacent audiences, away from misogynistic content online and towards community groups through advertising and partnership building.
So then where is the data for this?
Because it didn't work.
How many men have they actually diverted? Why would you not mention this anywhere in the entire report when that is your main focus?
Because they wasted their money. because it did not work. Because these people tried to do something without understanding media, the psychology of someone who watches the content. They're trying to fit a square peg into a round hole. See, if they actually cared, why not reach out to us? Why not have a conversation? Why not sit down with us? That would be the perfect opportunity to do that. But instead, they hide in their little cubbies in the basement of these educational facilities and create these manifestos and these reports in order to put up and try to discredit people. But if you actually cared, you would have reached out. That's how I know that this does not come from a place of genuine concern, and instead focuses on canceling content creators, getting them demonetized, which is a part of their recommendation, thus removing our platforms so the men cannot learn from these platforms. What an absolute missed opportunity to have public discourse regarding this.
Caitlin even mentions this as being one of their key performance indicators, or KPIs, and she says that these KPIs are essential for their own research. They are essential for measuring success, and yet these KPIs are completely missing from the report. These women even believe that if you consume any conservative media or content tailored to men, that you have a mental health disorder.
Observing the common rhetoric of Fox News or right-wing media, and that they're just sort of becoming these radicalized groups through what we identified as a lot of it being a lack of mental health resources.
These women dismiss every valid criticism that men have on marriage, feminism, modern dating, and politics in general as just simple misogyny and far-right extremism, and it's why this entire 55-page report is filled with mistake after mistake after mistake, and it doesn't even adhere to basic reporting standards for scientific research.
Yeah, it's trash.
Here, on page 5, no caption and no number. Then again, on page number 10, no caption and no numbering for this table. Then following that, all of these images are missing proper captioning and numbering, until we get to page 29 with the first figure 1. But then on page 42, again we find figure 1. So which figure 1 are you referring to later in the report? This is why official captioning standards dictate the use of chapters and subchapters. Another thing that's standard for research reporting is citation lists. You need a proper APA citation list with names of the books, journals, or reports that you used with their page numbers and edition. This way, someone can quickly verify that your information is correct and from a credible source.
Yeah.
But again, that is totally missing.
Amateurs.
Just like the dates of the websites that they accessed. Websites can be updated and changed all the time, which is why the dates are important for reproducing the research. Now, this all might seem trivial if you've never written a proper scientific report, but trust me, these are first-year mistakes, and they are not tolerated at any proper master or PhD level.
Incompetence.
I studied at the Technical University in Delft and also at the Bocconi University in Milan, and this would have never been graded at both of these institutions.
Would have been laughed
The real
at.
problem here is that those things are only the beginning, and it gets so much worse from here. Because if you look at the male supremacy list, two things stand out immediately. 1. Why are the most extreme creators on that list only scoring in the middle of the pack?
They had all of the evidence. They had all of these educated people writing these reports. They've done obviously a lot of due diligence into looking at all of these channels to the extent of individual write-ups about them, but they still placed me above Fresh and Fit and Just Pearly Things. We talk about KPIs. That is the key performance indicator of an unsuccessful report that is inaccurate as shit.
Why are the most extreme creators on that list only scoring in the middle of the pack? This is like making a list of the worst Nazis and going 1 Goebbels, 2 Himmler, 3 Aretha Franklin, 4 Goring, 5 Pikachu, and 6 Hitler. That makes absolutely zero sense. And the second thing that stands out is that by the team's own accord, they claim to be focusing on 11 prominent accounts and influential figures in the manosphere on YouTube. However, they then handpick Sandman and 21 Studios and put them on the list as well. Now, no shade to them, but I'm purely looking at the numbers here. And
they don't have numbers.
That doesn't make any sense.
Right.
With Sandman, most of his videos for the past 12 months did not break 10K views, and 21 Studios hasn't even uploaded a single video or stream in the
like
past
a year.
9 months. And before that, most of their videos struggled to even break 5K views. So how the hell is that considered influential on YouTube?
Right, it's targeted.
Especially when you have major creators like Alexander Grace easily breaking 100K views per video, or the widely successful and now infamous Whatever podcast that has multiple channels going viral both on YouTube and TikTok, so there's no way they would have missed these or other channels, especially if you would be doing thorough research as they claim.
Right.
Now obviously, I'm not trying to throw Alexander or the Whatever podcast under the bus here. I don't think either of them should be on a male supremacy list. However, what I am trying to point out is that these so-called researchers are not even following their own logic, and that their own methodology is already falling apart before we even get started with the actual calculations. Now at this point, combined with all the other information, you can already tell that this entire report just stinks to high heaven, and is just a feminist fever dream riddled with errors driven solely by emotion and anger. But wait, it gets even worse.
Let's get into it.
Not only did the team not understand their own measuring metrics, but they actually changed the definition of those metrics and then compared them with industry standards to give a false impression of success. For instance, if you look at the only result that they did publish, which was the ad view rates, also known as the view through rates, or VTR, of 50%, then we see that they claim to have beaten the industry average of 30%. That sounds amazing, right? Well, it is actually completely made up. And it's the reason why they won't publish the raw data. You see, YouTube's official method for calculating the view-through rate is ad views over impressions. However, not every single ad view counts as an actual ad view. The ad view must comply with one of three measuring standards, which are 1. Viewed for 20 seconds on a 20-second video ad, 2. Viewed for 32 seconds on a 40-second video ad, or 3. It must have a click on the ad after 18 seconds of view time. These are the official metrics used to calculate VTR. However, Caitlyn and her team did not use this. They made up their own metric, which they state as the skippable video ad is not skipped after 5 seconds. Now, since you obviously can't skip the ad for the first 5 seconds, this way of measuring is going to have a much higher view-through rate, and it tells you nothing about the viewer's interest.
Ooh. So you used an industry term, but changed the definition in order to skew your numbers to show a 50% rate for view through. Meanwhile, half of the ads that we see up on YouTube, it's not skippable until after 5 seconds. That is diabolical work. So these people will walk in and be like, listen, look at this 50% number. It's better than industry standards, so that they can get their high fives and continue funding. This is why they won't release the raw data. And in fact, if that 50% number was true, the places that they diverted the traffic to would be much bigger. Right? But I've taken a look at some of these places because they had them in the report, and these channels are like under 1,000 subscribers, like barely anyone ever watches them because it's whack content. I saw one video and it was a bunch of dudes holding hands in a circle talking about their feelings. Why would you want to think that men would want to watch that? Only women watch like that on Lifetime. But again, instead of having a conversation with content creators like myself to build that bridge, you want to silence us. Okay.
It's simply a measure of how quickly someone can click skip as soon as the skip becomes available.
Right.
And this is why YouTube uses a much more thorough method of measuring.
Makes sense.
And so by YouTube standards, this leads to an average VTR on the platform of 10 to 15%.
Which makes sense.
So the 30% that Caitlyn is referring to is actually from third-party sources focusing on the most highly optimized industry ads
so you lied
that
twice.
Targets the user's interest. However, Caitlyn and her team are doing the complete opposite, since they are trying to divert the user away from their interest to something that the viewer is normally not interested in.
We saw some interesting click-through rates, especially given that this group doesn't normally click on things that are necessarily good for them,
but yet somehow they are still easily outperforming those optimized industry ads. Do you see how insane this sounds?
It's so crazy.
So clearly this is incorrect, and they are presenting false data here.
Yeah.
So to summarize this entire mess, in a 55-page report dedicated to diverting men away from hate, not one mention on the actual conversion ratios of how many men they actually diverted, and thus showing us their effectiveness. Not a single mention of their own click-through rates, not a single mention of how many page visits to those alternative resources, not a single mention of their own key performance indicators that Caitlyn herself called essential for measuring success. So when you put all of this together, it is complete insanity that Professor Jason Blazakis allowed such a garbage report to go ahead and be published, and it shows that the Middlebury Institute that produced these clowns is a complete joke of a university and a total waste of your $48,000 a year tuition. This type of garbage research is why ordinary people don't trust science anymore.
Yeah.
And it's why most social science today is complete trash.
Yeah.
This was why the real MTR is under attack. Please
shout out again to FBE Capital. Guys, go click on his content. This guy's creating Netflix movies up on his page. Final thoughts on this whole drama, this whole debacle with this organization that produced this trash report is that, you know, for the time period, I believe it was like May or something like that, this report was released. I will say it wasn't easy for me to go through and have to deal with it. I actually took some days off after doing my response to this video, and it really had me considering this whole idea of a matrix and this whole idea of government entities. Because if you look at my channel back in like 2019, 2020, when people would refer to they trying to control us, I was much more in the mindset of, well, who's they? What are their names? And sometimes you don't know who their names are. And as proven with this report, because I was targeted for something that makes absolutely no sense with the structure of my channel. And there's so many other things that they did not call out within this video that continued not to make sense, such as how are you surveying the top 10 videos on a channel, which for me, probably from a views perspective, probably makes up less than 1% of the total views on my channel. How are you utilizing that to tell a story about my entire channel? It makes no sense. Or if you're using 10 videos, but I produce 1,700 videos on the way to 1,800 any day now, but you're using 10 videos to summarize my channel. There is not a researcher on this planet I would think that conducting research in that manner is adequate. In fact, actual researchers would laugh in reading how they conducted this study. But nevertheless, the content still continues and the learnings still proceed. Last but not least, guys, if you want to join my self-development community, there's a link to it down in the description box down below. We're over 2,000 members over there. So click in, beam up, and I will see you guys soon. Until next time, YouTube.